when I was tweeting what various people were saying, which makes me look very rude. So I'm Mika, and I know various people in the room, but not all of you. I'm here today wearing my Labour Energy Forum hat. During the day I work for an organisation called Platform, which does research and campaigning about energy and about the energy economy. But I'm also part of something called Labour Energy Forum, which is making this happen, which Skeena also works for. And we're all Labour members, and our purpose is to build a progressive, democratic, clean energy future, and a vision of that, and a practicality of that, a pathway towards it within our party, help get it built in reality. And that's partly about a shift, a transition towards 21st century technology. It's also about making sure that people have cleaner, not only cleaner energy, but also cheaper energy, access to the energy that they need, and things like creating jobs and a stronger economy. When you're thinking about energy stuff, it's not just about this environmental box. And part of our work is about building positive solutions right here and now. So we're working with Sadiq's team on the GLA about trying to set up Energy for Londoners, so something you might have heard about. It's a municipal, publicly owned energy company that sells cheap and clean electricity to us if we switch to it. But part of it is also thinking about pensions, part of our work, and recognizing, starting from that place of recognizing, as Stella said earlier, that 80% of fossil fuels need to be left in the ground to prevent catastrophic climate change. Of course, whether or not 80% of fossil fuels will be left in the ground is in itself debatable, especially with Trump. But it makes sense to start from the position of, well, we can't be assuming catastrophic climate change, so we need to start from the position of that won't happen, and politicians and businesses and everybody and people across the world will work to keep civilization existing. In that context, we then need to think about questions about stranded assets. What does it mean if a very large portion of oil, gas and coal reserves are not taken out of the ground? What does that mean? Those oil and gas and coal reserves will not only belong to Saudi Aramco or PDVSA in Venezuela, they will also belong to BP, Shell, and Rio Tinto. And I'm sure everybody now has recognized that that means that at some point BP, Rio Tinto and Shell shares, which currently are largely their share value, not entirely, but it's heavily shaped by the amount of reserves that they have in the ground. When the Shell reserve scandal hit in the early 2000s, then their share price crashed because they had less future revenue. So similarly, if those reserves are not all going to be taken out of the ground, then at some point they will not be worth what they are today. And when we say pensions, people often think, well, therefore we're talking about pensioners. And that surely this won't be an issue for someone who is currently 70, because clearly BP is going to keep taking oil out of the ground in the future and probably keep making a significant profits for 5 years. But of course, pensions are not only for people who are currently pensioners, but the whole gamut. And local government pension members include people in their 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s, maybe and probably teens. And the impact of BP no longer being worth what it is today on someone who is 35, like myself, who would only be drawing a pension in 30 years, in 2047, is quite different. So it's about the long-term risk, and recognizing that within pensions, pension funds need to treat members fairly as between them. There's a responsibility to recognize that the fund has an equal responsibility to delivering my pension as the person who's 64. In my day job, we did a lot of assessments and looking at local government pensions across the country, trying to assess, okay, £200 billion worth over that, spread across 99 or 101 funds, depending on what you count a couple. and we analysed, okay, sourced all the data, put it out there, tried to assess what is fossil fuel exposure, worked out there was around £14 billion. I think we overestimated northern forests. I think Stella was actually using our figures, not your figures, before, which is, we put them out a bit too early. And part of that is it's tricky to work out what are ultimately what really counts, and you can't be quite sure. But what's clear is that there is a lot of exposure to fossil fuels. And there's also clearly a lot of potential to reinvest, which I'll come to in a second. What's quite exciting is how over the past year and a half we've seen significant action from local government pension funds to move money away from fossil fuels. So I guess the Environment Agency Pension Fund, who are part of the pension fund, were the first. I guess people know about, they said, okay, we're going to take 90% of our investments in coal, out of coal, and 50% out of oil and gas, which was at that time pegged to then studies on what needed, how you need to leave 90% coal in the ground, 50% of oil and gas in the ground to prevent 2 degrees of warming. Of course, now it's probably a bit more. We also saw, after Environment Agency Pension Fund, we saw South Yorkshire saying that they were going to move money out of coal and tar sands. Haringey selling off. It's interesting because Haringey, I don't think, have a pledge of like that they will keep their money out of coal and tar sands, but they did immediately move money out of coal and tar sands, so it's slightly different, moving some money but not committing anything. And then Waltham Forest were the next kind of the first, which is quite exciting, so absolutely. Which is, in fact, I've been thinking, should I stand as a councillor so that I can get to be on the pensions committee, so that I can, have a role in getting divested, but Simon totally trashed my plan and saved lots and lots of energy.
I wanted to keep my own job.
I no longer need to do that. But so, Waltham Forest was first, great, yes, we will fully do it over 5 years. Southwark also said, yes, we will fully do it. Timeline's not as clear, but also it's going to happen. Hackney also did a very careful analysis. Talked a lot about decarbonisation, but then actually in the end have decided to also divest, but initially only to 50% over 6 years. So there's different models being put in there, but it shows that it's possible. You can take different routes, but it is a reality now. It's no longer something theoretical. And similarly, reinvestment is also a reality, and I think Simon's spot on about saying we need to avoid getting stuck on saying, okay, we've got this money in BP, can we take this money out in BP and out of BP and put it into a wind farm? Because they're not equivalent things. And if you say that to a fund manager, then they're going to go, that doesn't work. And it's 2 different questions. One is, can we divest this? Can we have a diverse portfolio without having that money in BP? Yes. There are other ways to ensure that you see the constant dividend flow, as well as the kind of stability that BP has in the past offered in the future. And then there's another question of, is it possible to put some of our money into sensible, sustainable solutions? As Labour Energy Forum, when we talk about reinvestment, we don't say reinvest into clean energy, because we think a sustainable energy, we think the new economy isn't just about clean energy. That's essential, but so is social housing, so is public transport, so is clean tech, so is all the things connected to industrial strategy. And a lot of those things are already being invested into. So in terms of clean energy, I don't know about details. I heard that Waltham Forest put some money into wind. I know that Manchester and Strathclyde, who are the 2 largest local government pension funds in the country, in like 15 times the size of Waltham Forest, have put 50 million each, at least into offshore wind. South Yorkshire put somewhere 1.5 million into local community energy. Lancashire did a very exciting project where they put around 10 million into a Westmill energy cooperative, which was also a win-win, because the energy co-op had borrowed the money from a bank and was paying around 13% interest on it. Don't know those figures precisely. Lancashire said, okay, well, we'll invest instead. You can pay back the bank. You will no longer be paying 13% a year. But we instead would like a return of around 9%. Now, 9% is a great, solid return to have guaranteed over a long period of time. And the co-op also ended up better off by saving the money. So there's a lot of solutions like social housing. It's a tricky one. Falkirk in Scotland have built council housing using their pension. And similarly, social housing also provides you a very guaranteed return over a long period of time. It's complicated, I'm not saying it's simple. But we need to learn in the UK that there's a lot of institutions, financial institutions around the world, putting pension funds into infrastructure. The Canadian pension fund owns masses of the infrastructure in this country. The Canadian Teachers Pension Fund. And patient capital is something that we in the UK struggle with in our economy. And that's part of why productivity is an issue here, because a lot of the capital that we in the country is like money out. Yeah. You look at Germany, other places, investment state, and it's got patient capital, which is like, we're going to invest in this thing for 20 years because we believe in it from an economic perspective. And that's why local government pension funds have a perfect fit, because those are also intended to be long-term secure solutions to provide people with their guaranteed pension, which also where Stella's spot on in terms of the growth stuff with pensions. So finally, so I don't talk too much. I think as London, and this also back to Stella, I think we need a clear Labour voice on divestment. I think we're not quite grabbing it, and that's partly why we've been doing this stuff on the Labour Divests, kind of pulling people together, is Labour can lead on this stuff. It's easy. Like the Parliament stuff, Caroline Lucas gets all the media around it, and obviously, Caroline's great, there's lots of stuff, but this should be a Labour agenda, because it's about building a future that works for all of us, and putting the money into the parts of the economy that we need. And as London, we can take a lead on that. And I think Waltham Forest and Southwark and the others can play a crucial role in the build-up to the 2018 elections, where we're going to face a challenge. Our vote share ain't so solid at the moment, and we need something that also pulls us together. And especially with the pooling process, which I guess most people are aware of, all London boroughs under the collective investment vehicle are in a process of pooling and working out where do we put money. There's still control on local level, but the options are being limited. And Labour collectively in that space can say, we want these solutions, these places where we can invest into, and we're going to communicate this to the outside world. So it's not just this obtuse, distant, technical thing that most people don't relate to. Actually, in the elections in 2018, we're going to be saying that we as London, different boroughs are going to be working together to move London's pensions out of fossil fuels and into economy. Now, of course, we can't force Tory boroughs to do that as well, but we can say that these options will be there and take leadership as London on something that we really should be leading on, so that when London and Labour are going, it can be possible. Maybe I'll leave it there. There's some engagement stuff, I think, that I can talk about, but I might leave that.
Should we come on to that later?